I wrote the opinion for the court in the case upholding the voter ID requirements in Indiana, I think the case was. And I think the decision was correct on the case, and not because I think voter ID are a great idea, but I think in the case before us, the plaintiffs failed to prove that the voter ID rules would have the adverse impact on the electorate that has generally been assumed later on. I think they did not prove their case. I think it's a case that they had an excellent trial judge who came to that conclusion. The record really didn't support the allegations. On the Court of Appeals, a very fine Court of Appeals judge, Dick Posner, wrote the opinion reaching the same conclusion. And I wrote the opinion on the Court of Appeals, again concluding that the voter ID requirements did not, in fact, have the adverse, they did not prove that they had the adverse impact on minorities that is generally assumed to be the case now. And I think Justice Souter wrote a very persuasive dissent which indicated why that is the right conclusion. But I was persuaded at the time, and I think that Judge Posner was also, that on the record before us, those conclusions had not been proved. But I think that it's an unfortunate decision because I think it is interpreted as those of us who were in the majority concluding that voter IDs are a good idea, which is not the case at all. I don't think they're necessarily a good idea, and I'm not really persuaded they're necessary. But they are a permissible method of determining the eligibility of people to vote. And I think the statutes, the case before us failed to prove the contrary. So I've always been unhappy.
So this is a decision that you personally regret that you had to make based on the case that was being brought before you.
That's exactly right. It's very, very much like the case I mentioned earlier.
The death penalty case.
Well, no, the marijuana case that I was going to mention is that I also wrote the opinion which upheld the power of Congress to enforce the marijuana prohibition against growing marijuana against the people out in California who had their own plot of marijuana and needed it for health reasons. But the question was not whether marijuana was a wise or good thing to do. The question was one of federal power. And I thought the federal government had the power that was at stake in that case, but I was very unhappy about the opinion I felt I had to write. And there's a vast difference between doing what you think the law requires and doing what you'd like to do if you were the guy running the legislature.